Hey, before we get into today's video, I want to make a little disclaimer here. Now, in this video, I'm going to be naming what I think is the best and the worst handgun to come out in the last 10 years. Now, a lot of people, after I name the worst handgun, are going to say, well, what about a Jennings? Or what about Kel-Tec? You hate Kel-Tec. Why isn't that on the list? Why isn't one of those guns? Well, for me, for something to be the worst, there has to have been at least an expectation of it being good. If you buy garbage like Ravens or Kel-Tecs, etc., well, then you've got no reason to bitch once you get it and it is garbage. That's what you bought. So that won't be on the list. If I included guns like that, every time I did a worst list, it would just be, here's the catalog to Kel-Tec. So those will not be considered for the worst gun. Just wanted to let people know that. Any gun like that. Also, I'll be naming the best gun, like I said. And for people out there who want to get upset about what I choose for the best gun, well, first off, screw you. I don't care. It's my opinion. But secondly, if a gun manufacturer just changes a grip or a sight or something like that, that's not a new gun. And plus, for something to be the best new gun to come out, I think it actually has to have an impact on the market. And I believe the gun that I chose did just that. So with that being said, let's get on with today's video. Hey, I want to take some time today to do a video that was requested by a viewer. This viewer sent me an email and said, since it is now 2020 and we're starting a new decade, what do I think were the best and worst handgun of the previous decade? The best and worst handgun that was introduced during the previous decade. Now, before anyone goes off on me now about not understanding the calendar, I understand that 2020 is not the first year of the new decade. It's actually the last year of the previous decade since time didn't start with 0. But let's humor the premise here. Let's just pretend that instead of saying the last decade, we're saying the best and worst handgun of the 2010s. Let's do it that way. And this video is actually requiring some thought, but the first part, the bad news, the worst gun of the 2010s, was not actually hard for me. This one was pretty easy because I've always had this gun in my mind as being the worst gun in a long time. So like I said, let's start with the bad news. Let's start with the worst gun introduced in the 2010s. Well, I really kind of wanted to give this honor to the Springfield Armory gun, the XD series that had the grip zone written on the grip. But then in the end, I'm like, that's tacky and it was stupid, but it didn't make the gun an unreliable gun or a bad gun in any way. It's still a reliable, functional gun that if someone was using it to defend themselves, I wouldn't say anything negative about it. So I can't really give it the worst gun of the 2010s title. The gun that I am giving the title to is a gun that was horrible from the beginning. This gun was plagued with issues and it was just downright ugly. And it is the Kimber Solo. Now, before anyone accuses me of being a Kimber hater, I'm not a Kimber hater. I like Kimbers. I like their 1911s, love their revolvers. But the Solo was a disaster from day one. This gun looks like someone was tasked with designing a new handgun, given a deadline, and then they forgot about it until the day the assignment was due. And then they tried to slap something together at the last minute. It's just hideous to look at. That safety that looks like it was glued on, like it was an afterthought. I mean, it's just an ugly gun. Plus, it was racked with problems at the range. Failures to feed, failures to eject. If you didn't have the exact right weight ammo with the right loading, that gun just didn't function. Also, it was plagued with mechanical issues, magazines that would fall out, grips that would break, safeties that broke. It was just a crap gun from top to bottom. So that is the worst gun introduced in the 2010s, the Kimber Solo. All right, now let's move on to the best new model of handgun introduced in the 2010s. And this gun is one I had to think quite a bit about. Because I'm going to be honest, at first here, I was going to give this honor to the SIG P320. This gun is just awesome from top to bottom. That modular design where you have a firing control unit that you can put different grips on, different frames on, different slides on. It was just a great concept from the beginning. Plus, it turned out to be a fantastic gun. In fact, it's the gun that is now stealing the market from Glock. It's just a really good gun. Police departments, militaries, etc. are picking this gun up at an amazing pace because it is such a good, affordable gun. But as good as it is, and it is awesome, and it does fit the needs of a lot of militaries and law enforcement agencies, etc., I still don't think it's the best overall gun produced in the 2010s, or first introduced in the 2010s. I'm going to have to give that to a gun that just barely squeaked in. One that first started being produced in June of 2010, and that gun is the Ruger LCR. And then later in 2013, my favorite variation of this gun, the Ruger LCRX. It's kind of a tie here between the two guns because I think the Ruger LCR introduced a whole new generation of people to carrying revolvers because it pretty much is the best small frame carry revolver that you can buy. I think a lot of people agree on that. I definitely agree on that. As much as I love Smith & Wesson and prefer Smith & Wesson, I can admit that the LCR revolutionized carry as far as introducing carriers to revolvers for the first time. And it's just an awesome gun from top to bottom, very reliable, very well made, very easy to use, removable front sights, which was uncommon on small revolvers at the time. Just an all-around great gun. And that double action only trigger on that gun is amazing. Now, like I said, I do prefer the LCRX that came out later because it adds the single action capacity to the gun. It's a double action, single action gun, but it's still just as great as the LCR in every other way, just adds that hammer, that exposed hammer. So that gun kind of revolutionized carry. Like I said, people were moving to where everyone was carrying these small little like LCP type guns, which I just don't find to be that reliable when you take a semi-auto down and make it that small. They're reliable, but they're not as reliable as they could be as in a bigger gun. Whereas when you go down, even with the small frame of that revolver, it's still uber reliable as a large gun in that small platform. So like I said, I think it kind of, in a way, revolutionized carry by making it to where more people could carry a very reliable, small, lightweight, powerful gun also, available in 357 Magnum, 327, also 38 Special. Just a great gun, 9mm, comes in a lot of different calibers, but it's just a fantastic gun. I love the gun. I don't personally carry one because I prefer Smith & Wesson, but that doesn't stop me from recognizing the fact that the Ruger LCR and later the LCRX were, in my opinion, the best new handguns introduced in the 2010s.